Thank you for listening to another episode of the Business of Fun podcast. We have a banger for you today because I have my friend Randy Nichols on the podcast. And you know Randy, he is on LinkedIn. He is on the Twitters. He is all over the place. I think a lot of people maybe gained awareness of him due to his I think it was like 2-hour conversation, back and forth debate with Eric Fuller on Scott Friedman's Twitter channel. So we have a great conversation today. We're going to get into that in a moment. But before I tell you about my conversation with Randy, if you check out the Dave Wakeman website, you're going to notice in the shop there is a laid out customer path with a set of selections for you. So check it out, davewakeman.com, where you can also get my newsletters, or you can go to talkingtickets.substack.com and sign up for the Talking Tickets newsletter, which is my way of communicating ideas to help you sell more tickets, create fans in 2025, 2026, and beyond. And it has been my way of communicating that to you for years. So check it out, talkingtickets.substack.com. You might want to check out the Talking Tickets Slack channel, which you can find in the newsletter. And I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes. I'm going to introduce a couple new features, some new value, so people can gain even more from the Talking Tickets Slack channel experience. Daily questions. I'm going to put some special things in there. So check it out. I'm going to put a link in the show notes. So back to my conversation with Randy Nichols. Randy is all over the ticket industry. He is a promoter of bands or a manager of bands. He advises businesses. He's involved in some tech things. He's got all kinds of stuff that he's working on. Our conversation today that I'm sharing covered a lot of ground. So the first thing we talked about was why he seems to be fighting the secondary market. Where does that fight come from? We talked about some of the deal points in concerts, and I thought that was an interesting thing because I remember being at the Seattle Theater Group and seeing and hearing, a lot of times hearing settlement conversations and how contentious they are, and how important they are to the profitability of venues and shows. We talked about some of that conversation with Eric and Scott. We talked about the secondary market. We talked about sports versus concerts. We talked about thinking about large businesses versus small businesses, especially when it comes to bands. We hit on the Taylor Swift tour. We talked about the ticketing companies. We talked about queuing technology. We talked about added value to the fans. We talked about products versus services. We talked about solutions. We got into some ideas about what can make the world of tickets better. We hit on a great deal of stuff. I think you're going to dig this conversation, so give it a listen. This is me talking to Randy Nichols. All right, I would like to welcome Randy Nichols to the Business of Fun podcast. Randy, I think people are in for a treat today because we are going to you have put no limits on me. You have said I can ask you the craziest questions I can come up with, which I hope that I live up to. So how are you? It's good to see you.
I'm doing great. Yeah, good to see you too, and I'm excited to talk ticketing. I feel like there's so many misconceptions about myself, as well as all of us who are fighting to, better the ticketing market for fans and artists. So stoked to, share some thoughts.
Yeah, what I love about us finally being able to do this is that I have sold it all week long since we scheduled it. This is going to be this big contentious thing, and then people are going to be really disappointed because they're going to be like going, well, these guys, I think they like each other. So it'll be pretty funny. All right, let's start here, though, because I did make some notes because I am a professional podcaster, by the way. So let's start out with this idea because I think you are recognized as somebody who has a clear point of view. You have a strong feeling of what's right and wrong in the industry, and you're willing to share that viewpoint and stand up for it. I'm going to start by asking you, what this fight and this point of view you developed is about, and why you feel so adamantly about it.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna take a step far back first of all, and say, when I was a kid, when we had the old Ticketmaster machines that we would line up to buy tickets for, I would camp out overnight with my friends, which, to those of you people who, I know some people listening did this too, whether you're a broker or a fan or both, you did the camp out overnight. It was always the best part. It was better than the show half the time. And I would camp out for these tickets. And the location that I camped out in front of was a store called Video Connection, I believe, in Rockville Center, New York. It was a video store that nobody went into, but had a Ticketmaster machine. And every time I'd be first or second online, they would open the door 5 minutes late. I could hear from outside the printer just going. And if I was number one in the room, sometimes the show was sold out. Typically, the first 2 or 3 people got tickets. He never went into the machine to pull the tickets for me. They were sitting on the counter, and he handed me a ticket. And at that last person, when it was sold out, there were a stack on the counter, and the guy would just say, those aren't tickets. And from that point forward, I had this ire for people who were ripping us off, and it wasn't fair. I camped out all night. I did everything right, and some guy's going to make a fortune on these tickets. So that stuck in my craw from, like 15 years old onward. Moving forward to working in the industry today, I represent artists, and it's my job as an artist manager. And before I was a manager, I was an agent. So the same thing, negotiating deals for artists to make sure they're paid as much as they should be paid in a fair fashion. And the way this was described to me many years ago by the first person I worked for when I was an agent is, you have so much money on the table for a show, and all that money on the table are the ticket sales. And we as agents or managers need to fight to get as large of a percentage of that money on the table as possible. Makes perfect sense. But what I started to realize as I saw how large the broker market was is, we're sitting over here fighting over this money on the table, and there's a bigger pile sitting next to us that we generated that nobody's touching. And I felt that if we didn't put on this event, that money wouldn't exist. So we need to find ways to put that money into the kitty for our shows.
So far, so good. I tend to agree. The term for what you were happening is like going, the venue, the person drawing the tickets was getting ice from like a broker, right? Because I like to throw out the old school terms, because ice exists in a different fashion now, and I don't even know if people still use the term unless they're old school. So I think the interesting thing too is that your agent manager perspective, because when you talk about this money that's on the table and this huge pot of money versus the pot of money that exists outside of the thing, there's 2 things. I think, one, there's a misconception about that pot of money that's sitting on the table that people are arguing over. The second part of this is that that larger pile of money, one of the points of contention I have is that a lot of the guys on the secondary market, mostly still men, they feel like it's owed to them. Right. And, it's kind of contradictory to the way I approach things, which is like, if you're the person who's taking the risk of the event, putting on the event, like doing all these things, you just being able to buy something and turn around and sell it for more money is not value, because there's a huge difference between sports and concerts and even the theater. Right. Which is like, maybe like the broker has some value by buying tickets early for a sports team or buying tickets early for a Broadway production. The concert, though, that money is all held off to the side until the end of the show, right? Because we were talking about settlement, and like I was talking about like this lady I knew in Seattle who was about I don't know, remember, she was shorter than me, and she was like a little ferocious ball during the settlement things. I know that like you were talking about that. Can you explain what the differences is and why that matters, in the way that you're talking about these things?
Yeah, absolutely. In sports, you have PSLs, then season tickets, and any ticket that's sold in general, the team typically owns their stadium. They are the rights holder on that event. And second a ticket's sold, that money's flowing to them. And, maybe the money flows in 30 days, 20 days, whatever it is from the ticketing company. But when a broker considers themselves an investor in a team by providing that liquidity for the owner immediately, they're 100% accurate. And it's one of the reasons why I try to strongly separate sports from music, because on the music side, that money sits with the ticketing company, and the bigger, more trusted deals, it may or will flow to the promoter to cover deposits for artists, because artists typically get a 10% to 50% deposit upon confirmation of their deal with the promoter. So they need some money to allow them to lock in the talent to agree to play the show. But there's no liquidity provided to the artist. If Beyonce is playing MetLife Stadium in New York for 3 nights, Beyonce is not collecting those ticket dollars until after her show plays. And it doesn't help her business. So it's a very different, and to clarify, it does help her business post-show. It doesn't help her business pre-show. But it's important to us to just differentiate the two, because the businesses are operated in completely different fashion.
To me, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, the difference between a team, a sports team, and let's say a band like Beyonce, is that Beyonce, Pearl Jam, REM, Ariana Grande, Olivia Rodrigo, they're small businesses. The teams are more run like corporations, where they have like much more access to capital. They have a much, like you said, they own more tangible assets that they can use in producing their shows and locking things in. Is that accurate, or am I missing something when I'm describing it?
No, you're absolutely accurate. And by them owning tangible assets, there's significantly more financing opportunities for them to cover their costs, all the way down to everyone, for the most part, gets some kind of advance from the ticketing company on the venue side. They get a huge advance based on the kind of revenue that they drive, and then there's a revenue split on those ticket fees. And all these different accesses to capital allow them to operate their business. On the music side, you may get some kind of advance from Live Nation if you're a superstar level act to cover your startup costs, but quite often you're not getting any kind of lump sum payment in the beginning, and you don't see a dime of money in the artist's pocket till the tour starts, and they're self-financing their entire business. So they're very different. You're talking about multi-billion-dollar corporations versus, LLCs and sole proprietorships, these small little operations. And other than your handful of stadium level acts, that's how these are all operated.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I guess the thing that I'm interested about too is you talk about maybe an artist will get a 10 to 50% deposit on signing their deal. But probably the number of artists that can get any kind of advance or any kind of real substantial monetary payout before their shows go off is probably less than 10 in the world at this point, right? Maybe a dozen, a couple dozen.
It could be like 50. I mean, it's a real number, but it's not everyone. And, I spent a lot of time debating with other friends that I've made in the secondary market, and sometimes with the idiots on Twitter. And there's just a misperception of how all of this works. And these artists are not necessarily flush with cash when they're putting on a tour. And it's not as simple as everyone wants to make it out to be. And one other thing, that just popped in my head as we're talking about this is, I've debated many of times with folks on the secondary side of things who say, the artists are greedy because they want to increase the money that they're making on the shows and raising the ticket prices, when quite often they're raising the ticket price to remove that margin that the scalper can make on the secondary. And the way I view it, and this is predominantly the truth from what I've seen, is there'll be a gross of a show. We'll call it, for like a big show, $2 million. The actual gross of the show is 3 million because 1 million was made in a secondary. And our goal as activists fighting for artists is to keep that same $3 million that fans were paying and have it be a $3 million show gross. And not for the artists to be greedy and make more, although they will hopefully make more and should make more than the broker, but they're also reinvesting in the show for the fans. I mean, if you look at concerts over the last 10 years, the level of production that you see now versus a decade ago is exponentially bigger, and that correlates directly to a higher ticket price. Concerts and Broadway tickets used to have such a wide difference in pricing.
Yep.
And now concerts look like Broadway shows and they're priced like Broadway shows. So there's something to that where, these artists aren't necessarily greedy. They will hopefully make a bit more money. The scalpers hopefully make a bit less. And in theory, the fans overall paid the same and get a better product.
Yeah, I think one of the things about the production costs being higher and the costs and prices going up to match that, at least from my point of view, is that as the demand for people's entertainment dollars has increased, like people have had to keep up, right? Because you see artists go to like more unique venues to play, so like there's an evolution of just what value means for people, because it's the attention's more precious than before, and so I think one of the things that gets kind of lost in this argument, right, which is like you talk about the $3 million total gross that happens on the secondary market, is that I'm probably going to screw this question up. I think it's really, it's really what's going to happen. It's like you have higher production costs. We have higher prices. I'm going to reframe it because I think I'm going to get it right. $3 million gross, which is about 50% higher than the gross that happens at on sale, and along with like the misperceptions of how things work, they all to me go together. And I think what happens is, and this is where my question comes to you, is like during this kind of misperception, people not understanding what's going on, it seems to be a willful muddying of the water, so people don't understand what's going on, so that like just the mud goes and gets splattered all over everybody. Am I right in that my assessment? Like, so when people are going, well, the artists are trying to scalp, because I know you talked about your Twitter fights. Is all of this happening just to distract from the fact that like more people have their fingers in the pie?
I don't think you're necessarily wrong. Like there's so many people involved, and there are bad guys by design, and then there are bad guys who are not necessarily bad guys, but are masquerading as bad guys, who are now pretending to be good guys because they need to. And, to clarify all that, starting with Ticketmaster for, 30, 40 years, since Fred Rosen invented the service fee, has been the bad guy by design. The super quick history lesson for those who don't know: before Ticketmaster, venues used to pay a ticketing company to be their ticketing vendor. That flipped when Fred Rosen took over Ticketmaster in late 80s, early 90s, and said, hey, rather than you paying us, we'll pay you and the fan will eat it. And, they had, on tickets back then, like $3 or $4 service charge on a $20 ticket, and Ticketmaster takes half and the venue takes half. And the artist sees none of it, but this is their little deal. And in exchange, within that deal, that venue got a multi-million-dollar advance, and the service fee pays off that advance. So Ticketmaster was designed to then take the ire of the public when they're going to their favorite venue. that's now charging them a service fee that didn't anymore. They go, it's not us, it's our new ticketing vendor. They're expensive, but the ticketing's better, so we have to work with them. And in reality, the venue was the bad guy in that sense, but Ticketmaster was happy to stand up and take the attacks. Then, you fast forward a bunch of years and the times have changed. And, you look at, really got crazy around this Taylor Swift tour a couple of years back now. And Ticketmaster realized they couldn't stand up there and be the bad guy anymore because the government was trying to shut them down for their bad behaviors. And from that time where they were formed to now, those fees have jumped tremendously. And Ticketmaster still, I'm not here to defend them, but they don't take the lion's share of that fee. The lion's share of that fee is going to the venue, and it's really like debt financing for them to run various parts of their business and pay off these loans to run operations. And I'm not defending any of these people in the system, but it's designed for nobody to fully understand what's going on. And because of that design, people are mad at all the wrong people. And those wrong people are just basically standing there going, yeah, throw the mud at me. It's all good. And now it's flipped. And, why is anyone going to trust Ticketmaster? They're the company where you go to get a ticket and they screw you every time and you don't get one. Why are you suddenly going to believe them now that they don't take most of the service fee? So, and that's just one piece of the puzzle, but it's all, it's definitely was initially designed for confusion.
Yeah. And my take on it is always like, if it doesn't make sense to you, and if it doesn't get fixed, it's because it's working for someone, and it's working for someone way higher up the line than you are.
Yeah, and there's one other thing to point out in all this, which is this differentiation in sports and music also. In music, the customer of Ticketmaster is the concert venue where the artist is playing. In sports, it's the sports team who is actually throwing the event. So the person on stage is not a customer of Ticketmaster at any point. Right. They don't get very much say in anything that goes on. Ticketmaster has a music team. David Marcus runs it. Good guy, trying to support the artist. But at the end of the day, his customer is truly the venue. And that makes things tricky as well.
Yeah, I think this is one of those points of confusion, too, when you see people get just really irate about buying tickets on Ticketmaster, is that you have to look at who the customer really is. And even though, it's a multi-sided thing where it's like the venue or the promoter or whomever's putting on the concert is the customer, the fan is still the customer at the same time. But the fan definitely feels like they're the ones who like are least considered in the process. Everything feels like it's driven towards like what's the most convenient for everybody else, and the fans will just suck it up and eat it. So you work with a lot of artists. How do you fight that? Like, how do you and your artists work to kind of like lessen some of these sort of impacts? Because I think that's where people's fury comes from, is like they just feel like, oh, I'm just an ATM for Ticketmaster and the artist.
Yeah, and I think, there's a few things there. One, I feel like some of the work I've been doing over the last few years to educate people to how ticketing works helps in that education. But I think Ticketmaster, and it's unfair to say Ticketmaster because it's really all the ticketing companies. It's not just them. The ticketing companies. It's an
industry-wide issue.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like people used to call.
And we been talking about them. So
yeah, when I was a kid, people called the refrigerator the Frigidaire, or a tissue Kleenex. Yep. It's the same thing. We're using that name.
Google is the shorthand for search.
Exactly.
Ticketmaster has won because they are a verb.
Exactly. But those ticketing companies, and now I lost my train of thought because we were talking too much about it. Oh, I remember now, the customer. So I think these ticketing companies, they really need to do more to make the customer feel like they are part of the business and that they matter. You sit there in a queue and it tells you have 300,000 people in front of you or 10 million people in front of you. Like, the numbers are insane. And I mean, they could be doing little things like, we're sorry you're so far behind. We're trying to fight these bots who are getting in here ahead of you. Or, just education while you're waiting. They could be telling you, and I think this may be coming in the future from some of these companies, but if you're sitting in a queue, they could be telling you information like what the ticket scaling is, what the stage setup is, who the opening acts are on the show. Do something where when you're waiting to buy the product, where you feel like you're part of something. Like I think of like Steve Jobs back in the day on stage giving the Apple presentation. These ticketing companies can be doing a scaled down version of that to get you excited about the show. Mm-hmm. Instead, you're seeing a number and being annoyed. You can be both educated on the problem and also for the artist. Imagine if when you're looking at that countdown that, you have 2 million of your fans staring at, that they could listen to the new single from the artist that just dropped. I mean, I would feel a lot better sitting in a queue if I was for the first time ever hearing new music from the artist that I'm excited to go see. Like there's just so much more that they can be doing, and the customer experience is just forgotten about. Like I think you've been to the Sphere as well, Dave, have you?
No, I actually have not.
Oh, you haven't?
I've set out for it, but I didn't make it. Something got in the way. My wife is a huge U2 fan, and then it's like, but we couldn't make when we were going to go when we were going.
But I was going to go to this. I mean, I did go to the Sphere. You were going to go. You walk in, and it's an experience. Like before you get in the building to when you get in it, it's like waiting online for a Disney ride in a lot of ways. And I think we need to think of these lines differently. Like you need, it's funny. I listened to this weekly podcast from God, why am I forgetting their name? Lightshed Partners, and they were talking the other day about how Disney should. One person said Disney should buy Live Nation, and another guy said they shouldn't. But you need to Disneyify the process of buying tickets. Right. Someone will wait 4 hours online to go on Space Mountain, but it's an experience waiting online. There's no experience for buying tickets. And I think all these ticketing companies need to think about the fan experience, because so many are going to be let down, and there's nothing to let them down lightly. Like if you're number 50 million in the queue and you see there's only 200 tickets left, maybe just tell you that you're not going to get a ticket, so you're not in the queue. There's so much that we can be doing, and we drive people into like, yes, I'm about to get it. And then there's no fucking chance in hell they were going to get it. And they weren't going to get it because of all these queue bots that the scalpers are using to cut the lines, or these, as they claim, and I don't know which it is, but they claim that they have accounts that just automatically show up at the front of the line all the time. But whatever it is that they have, they're getting in front of us, and it's not fair.
Yeah, I know what these brokers, they tell me about all the different tricks of the trade of getting into the better places in the queue and everything, and again, that'd be one of the things I'd be interested in finding out, like some of the legislation and some of the lawsuits that the government's filed against Live Nation, because the accusations are pretty damning, but I'll spend enough time on it to know if any of it's like true. I know that like the brokers are going to tell me it's definitely true, and then somebody from Live Nation would tell me it's definitely not true. I don't know. It just sounds really crazy, which brings me back to this idea that I know I've shared a lot over the years, especially in the newsletter, which is like when people are thinking about this, I think the ticket is just becomes at the on sale becomes the whole thing. And there's really, it's like the ticket is the actual product, right? There's value, right? And the value is like, who are you going to go see? Are you going to go see Taylor Swift? Are you going to go see U2? Are you going to go see Beyonce? Are you going to go see Waiting for Godot on Broadway, right? Like, what are you going to go see? That's the value, that excitement and anticipation. But the third part of it's the augmented product. And it's all the things that go on around it, right? And so, like you said, it's like, is there a trailer for the show? Can you set some expectations? Can you both ways, right? Like, don't disappoint people, but amp people up, like, right? You know, all these different
Yeah.
things. And it's not something that people give great thought to. And it's not just in tickets, it's just everywhere. It's like this everything is an opportunity to create anticipation, to create joy. Even when you got to let somebody down, you can do it in a way that's like a little more humane, and a little more, a little less value detracting and a little more value adding. But I mean, I'm a little crazy that way. But what I find interesting about the way you talked about it was that it brings me back to some of the arguments you've had with the secondary people in the secondary market. And the very famous Twitter video with you and Scott and Eric, Scott Friedman and Eric Fuller, was a really amusing highlight of my of my year so far. But that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is like kind of this financialization of the live event, which is mirrors the financialization of everywhere. Um, but to me, that's one of the big value detractors that's happening right now, is that every time somebody goes into something, everybody has seems to have the incentive to financialize the events more and more. And I think that's what really drives so much of I think what you and I both might consider the bad actors in the secondary market. But I'd be curious. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. And it's frustrating because most of these scalpers are middlemen who forced their way in to somewhere that they don't belong. And that said, I want to say, like, if you're a season ticket holder to a team, you hold PSLs, you own those seats, and then you're going to resell them, I'm not pointing the finger at you. I'm pointing the finger at people who are just strictly going after extracting value from music and nothing else. But in that financialization, it's happening to degrees that are crazy. And when you look at parallel industries, it's not happening. You're not seeing people resell tickets to opening night for a movie that's, the next blockbuster and you can't get in because there's enough inventory. People go to the next one. So they've avoided and they're not doing it. You're legally, for the most part, can't resell flights or hotel rooms. Why can't you resell flights or hotel rooms? Both of those are a license for a service, just like music is. But, and on flights, they'll tell you that it's for safety reasons, that you need to know who's on the flight. But then, take a step back a second and go, where has there been more, people physically harmed, murdered, terrorist attacks, etc., at live events or flights? And the numbers over the last few years are 100% live events.
Yeah.
So shouldn't we be focusing on that security level and not allowing just anyone in and anyone to resell? We should know who's coming into our building for safety purposes. So you've got this commoditization of somebody else's product, and you're extracting the value, but you're also potentially causing a safety risk of us not knowing who's in the room. And then there's another level of safety risk that I don't hear talked about very much, which is that customer who thinks they're about to walk into their dream event, who bought a spec tick that was either canceled because it was a spec tick, or somebody created multiple barcodes by accident and the person didn't get in, or that was done on purpose. And now you have a guy outside who's incredibly angry, who maybe flew across the country or the world to see an event and is being told no. And the broker isn't there to deal with them. The secondary market isn't there to deal with them. Some, guy sitting in a box office who has to come out and talk to them to get them to move aside to help the next person has to tell them that they lost thousands of dollars and they're not getting into their dream show. And to say that's not a safety risk is just not true. And thankfully, I haven't heard of someone being assaulted in that fashion yet, but I think it's a matter of time. Like, humans are terrible people. Like, it's just unfortunate. Humans are
That'll
terrible.
Be the headline.
Yes. Humans are terrible. At some point in time, somebody is going to do something that they shouldn't do. And, most of these venues, they try to find ways to accommodate them, but they can't always. It might be there's a fire marshal issue and they can't allow another person in the room. Quite often there's a drop and not everybody comes in, so they can help them. But there are times they can't. And that is a safety issue in itself. And I want to add one other thing to rebut, something my friend Scott Fuller said when I was debating him on that thing on Scott's Takes Twitter feed a while back. And, he said, it's 1% of the people that aren't getting in. And, that's all well and good that it's 1%. But if you're at 1,000 cap club and 10 people are outside who didn't get in, that's a lot of angry people that you have to deal with while you're trying to get other people into your small club. But then you get to the arena level where, you have between 10 and 20,000 people. You have 200 unruly people potentially fighting, and also seeing, can you reseat them? Can you find places to put them? These venues are now spending money on resources specifically to service bad actors who didn't do their job and have extracted value out of their event. So it's not only the money that they're taking out, is it a large expense? No, it's probably, in a club, it's one extra person on hand to deal with it. In an arena, it's probably a small team of people. But why should we spend more money to fix your problem?
Right. Well, I think that's to me, that's the issue is like, I've always said that, like, if you are the person who's created this product, this experience, however it should be framed in the proper way, you should have the ability to control how it's distributed, how it's priced, how it's sold. If you're having to, the arena thing probably can afford to eat the cost. If you're at a small venue, though, that one extra person can be the difference between, breaking even, making money, or not making money, because so often the profit margins on some of these things are so thin that it's really, really like every dollar does count. But I want to go back to this idea that you talked about, which is, or I guess this is like the popular argument that gets made now, which is the concept of a license versus a product. You kind of we've talked around it a little bit. The argument seems to be that you can resell if you buy a car, you can sell it. If I'll use the sneaker example because the sneaker kids are driving so much of this. But if I buy a pair of Jordans, I can resell the Jordans, right? All of these things are going on. But the argument that on the other side is that it's a license and that you can revoke the license. I still don't actually know exactly where I fall down on it sometimes, but I'm curious, like, what's your argument as far as this goes?
Yeah, I mean, I just look at a physical product versus a service completely different. Of course, you should be able to resell your car. It's your car. But if you used bots to corner the market and get all the cars, and the only way to get a car is to go through you because you had financing to buy every car on the lot and block everyone in the neighborhood out, and the only way to get a car was to pay double, that's a problem.
Yeah.
You may legally be able to do that, but the laws will change quickly because you shouldn't be able to do that. And, like I often will use the example where, you're set up in front of Stop and Shop and you've made a fake Stop and Shop and people think you're walking into Stop and Shop, but everything's double and they don't know the difference. You shouldn't be allowed to do that. And that's what a lot of these people are doing. When you look at, the people who are cyber squatting on URLs similar to venue names, or the marketplaces spending, StubHub alone, $850 billion a year in search to hope that you show up on their platform instead of the correct platform. This is built on deception. This isn't reselling your car. But, on the sneaker side, the whole reselling Jordans, like, that does fall a lot closer to tickets. And I know that a lot of these sneaker companies don't like that those things are happening. So it's it's not that dissimilar. They were trying to stop those resellers too because their real customers were getting hurt. But the difference is, although I guess it's sort of
Well, let me
similar in
let me
music.
stop you
Go
because
ahead.
I think it's an
Yeah.
interesting the way you phrase it. You talked about it being a real, like tangible, physical product versus a service and experience, and I think that's interesting because it's like, let's say I'm going to do I'll make space in my calendar for a dozen fan for life audits, right? In the
Yeah.
next year, uh, each of them I charge $1,500 for. Somebody wants to buy, but because I'm so good at what I do, people want to buy. Somebody buys them up, right? Randy buys them all up. All pays me the whatever that would be, $18,000, right? But then you turn around and you go like, look, I got this thing for Dave. I'm going to double. It's $3,000. You know, you're saying that because it's a service, screw you. And I think and when you make it that way, I tend to agree with you because I would be like going, well, Randy bought the audit. Like I'm not gonna let Scott Friedman come in here and do it unless it's like he gifts it to him and I know he's gifted it, right?
Yeah. And
That
what if
like is
I
a little
made,
more compelling argument for me.
yeah. And what if I spent, a grand of my money to go out there and market how brilliant you are and resold all of your sessions through that marketing for double the money, and I did nothing and made more money than you, and you've got to sit there and still do all those sessions. If I made double the money than you
I'd be
for
pissed. I'd be like, I
you're
gotta
going to
raise my
cancel the
prices.
sessions. You're going to cancel the sessions probably and reopen it again and figure out how to cut me out of it and find out
But
who the
part of the
customers
problem
are.
would be they would say like, "Oh, look, we're marketing you." But I was like going, hey, "Are you?" Right? Because and this is where I push back on my own example here. It's because like if you're Taylor Swift, somebody's not helping market Taylor Swift. She's doing a fantastic job of doing that on her own, right? She does not need a lot of help at this right now selling tickets. It's I would buy the argument if it's you're helping sell. And the example I use is a show that was on Broadway when I started working on Broadway and doing stuff with like concierge programs and like all places around there was I forgot the name of it, but Boy George was on Broadway. The other one was Lennon the musical. But I was like going, if I'm helping you sell those tickets, then like the fee that I add on top of this, I deserve because I'm using my channels, I'm marketing aggressively. The producers, when it was on a sold out run and you couldn't get a ticket for any night because Matthew Broderick and Nathan Lane had come back and played the lead roles. I wasn't doing anything. I was extracting value, and I think that's the real the challenge for me a lot of times with some of these overtly like aggressive secondary market ideas. Is like, look, if you're marketing, if you're selling, if you have a unique customer base that you are selling into, right? Which I had a unique customer base, right? I had all the Wall Street people and everything. Then that's different. If you're just posting things on the internet and waiting for somebody to provide SEO, that's not value. That's extraction. Am I wrong?
No, I mean, and that's how I view this all. And it's, those searches to bring the people in, it's just they're better. It's not even that they're better at SEO, it's that they have more money for SEO. Because going back to the service fees, typically the secondary service fees are higher than the primary. The
Yep.
primary service fee is going to that venue. It's going to the ticketing company for the technology. But, the lion's share of that money is going to the venue. And that money, not to pack the venue, it's not just lining their pockets. That's operational funds to run their business because the show runs on such razor thin margins. So all that service fee is going on a primary ticket to support the shows. On the secondary, they charge a higher fee, and the vast majority of that money is just going right back to SEO. When StubHub just went public, they had
So
to.
Google is taxing the ticket. Really, the if we should be supremely mad at Google.
You're not wrong. Google is making over $1 billion a year on search. There's no question about it. When you just look at the numbers of what StubHub alone spends on marketing, and they're one singular
Yep.
company. So these ticketing companies, when you look at StubHub, they spent, I think, $50 million last year on operations, their S1 said. It was either 50 or 60 million. I don't want to be unfair. It was one or the other. And 850 on marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that can't happen in the primary. Ticketmaster doesn't even have, numbers near that they could do it, but they don't really spend much to market the show anyway. The promoter spends the money to
Mm-hmm.
market the show, and the promoter doesn't have that high of a fee nor that much of the fee to spend to market the show. So it's completely different.
Yeah. And I know from just like, I mean, this is not a new conversation. This is a ongoing conversation that as long as I've done the podcast, the newsletter, really just been in, I'd say the better part of the last decade really is that the venues, the promoters, they can't keep up with, because do they do SEO better? Yes, because they have like you said, the money to, and talking about the secondary market, to invest in understanding SEO and driving more SEO. At the same time, there is a huge monetary advantage because as that expertise has kind of become better and better, Google has found a way to make it less and less of an advantage, and they just keep sucking up more and more of those ad revenues. And it's a to be fair, I think it's a fight neither side can win.
Well, I'll tell you how it may end, though. I, for the last 2 weeks, have shifted from using Google Chrome to using the ChatGPT browser, which I absolutely love. And it was the easiest transition I've ever made. And when I search for an artist or a show now, it shows the ticket, not the paid search listings, because ChatGPT operates completely differently. So you're going to see some changings of the playing field, just how search as an industry overall has changed. So there is going to be some changing impact to all this. One other thing that's worth mentioning, and it's kind of aside from this but makes sense, when we're talking about fees and ticketing in general, is you have a company like Ticketmaster who, whether they were doing these bad things or not, which we were talking about before with the legislation, is they were certainly not fully disincentivized to stop brokers from buying up tickets. And if they were forced to divest resale from their business, would they invest more money in technology to stop the other people from making money? And I don't have the answer, but there's all these other things where they made money when the ticket was sold the second time. So were they actually doing every possible thing to stop that with the fees and the capital that they have in-house?
Follow the money is a really great, always a great rule of thumb. And to go back to your idea about using the browser, the ChatGPT browser, I know that for the last, God, I don't know, it's been 18 months now, I've used Kagi, Kagi, which is a paid search engine. And again, it's like a whole lot better experience. Like if I'm looking for something, I get it, not the paid ads, the 8 paid ads before I get any search result or whatever. So I would tell people definitely to not default to whatever search engine they've been defaulted to, and check out a couple of these different ideas because there are better ways. It might also, as more people, if you watch the adaptation of these tools, it might shift the way that you approach the marketing of your productions, the marketing of your shows, the marketing of your tours, because as people's behaviors change, that's going to mean that the way you market should change. That seems obvious, but then I know that it doesn't happen. So that is my sale. Visit DaveWakeman.com for more.
Hey, you're allowed to self-promote on your own podcast.
Absolutely. What do you think this thing is? So let's talk about solutions. Like we talked a lot about challenges and issues and kind of got into like all these different things. But what are some solutions? Like I know that you are always like about improvement. So what can we do that make things better?
Yeah. So looking at this, there's one thing that I've found in, my battles with brokers or my very friendly conversations, because I've got to say, I got to give a shout out to a lot of people who probably want to remain nameless, who have made friends with, who are in the secondary, season ticket holders, those kind of people who are really good people. But what I've learned from them is they're shocked at how little information and how few tools the primary market has, be it the promoters, the artists, the ticketing companies, to understand the secondary market. So my biggest goal is for us as a primary market to learn from the brilliant systems that have been built. Ultimately, whether I like them or hate them, the marketplaces and the pipes that connect them, as you guys call them, the POS systems that are distributing tickets around, all these tools, and the pricing platforms, there's so many different tools. You guys have the best tools. We have shit tools on our side of the industry. And we need to learn from you guys. Like, one of the things that blows my mind is any broker who's, beyond day one in the business can find a tool to find out how many tickets were sold for a show. Mm-hmm. When I show those tools to people who have been agents and managers for 20 or 30 years in the business, they are absolutely shocked that there's a way to find out the sales. And they're regularly trying to understand the sales of other people's tours. Like, they know that somebody's tour is soft or not, but they don't know the exact numbers. And, you have promoters in a town who don't know that the show across town that, maybe they wanted to bid for but decided not to, they don't know how it's sold. But right. The scalpers have all this information at hand. So one of the things that I really want to do is begin connecting tools that help the secondary to help the artists better control their business. And it's one of the reasons why I enjoy having friendly conversations with people from the broker community, because I've found that almost everyone, and there are a few exceptions, but almost everyone wants to see us do better too. And I think they see it that if the primary thrives stronger, the secondary has the ability to feast off of us. So they're okay with helping us. But I want to connect the dots, and I want to talk to people who we can use their technology for the greater good. And I've seen brilliant tools out there. Like a great example would be Keith, who you had on a couple of weeks ago with what's the site, ticketdata.com?
Ticketdata.com, yeah.
Yeah, and ticketdata.com is
a wealth of information that you get on this Business of Fun podcast. Follow, like, and share. I'm totally busted today.
What Dave said.
You've got me on a silly day. Share. You've got me on a silly day.
Yeah, but ticketdata.com, I've been sharing that site with some agents and managers, and they're blown away at the information that they're finding out about their own acts. So there's so much more that we can be doing, and I want to collaborate with people. Like I connected with Keith after I listened to Dave's interview with him, and trying to figure out if there's things that we could do together. I want to find ways to just raise all boats and simultaneously get rid of the awful actors.
Yeah, I know. I'm not one of those people who believes that you're ever going to eliminate completely resale. I actually probably, if you push me on it, I would say that like there's room for a certain amount of resale, right? It's just and that would be a combination of like the face value only resale and like some of the stuff that like even somebody like me did way back in the days, right? What I struggle with and what I know is unsustainable though is this kind of just like YOLO resale and like sort of the just this rabid financialization of everything, and that's not good, because then it's becomes a arms race to see who has the least amount of ethics and is willing to do the most harmful thing to the entire business, as long as they make a little money in the short term. And that's where I really like end up struggling a lot on these things, because I know that there's tons and tons of people who are in the secondary market who they have customers, they built like legitimate businesses, and they do a really great job. And it's some of the, like, I think anybody would say, some of the bad actors and some of the bad actions, some of the things that, like, they're maybe not illegal, but they probably should be, because the laws aren't changing or being enforced rapidly enough to do something about. Those are things that I struggle with sometimes, and and I'm like pretty upfront about that. And I
Yeah,
think
and the
you
bad
agree with
actors.
me.
Oh no, I do. And the bad actors, they're facing, a challenge right now, and it's interesting because I think for what I consider a bad actor may be slightly different to what you consider a bad actor, to what another person considers a bad actor. But I've had some conversations with brokers over the last couple of weeks talking about this whole Ticketmaster using persona to reveal if they're real people buying tickets. And I was talking to one, and I was explaining all the things that I think they could do potentially to still get around the security verifications. And this specific person said to me, he said, the vast majority of people I know, whether they're bad actors or not, identity fraud is too far gone. Creating a
Mhm.
truly fake identity and spoofing it, and then using it for, in across state line financial transactions, like, that's going too far. So I think you're gonna see a changing of the tides currently with, Ticketmaster alone, with their use of persona to verify accounts, not allowing people to have multiple accounts anymore, and like all these steps, shutting down trade desk. Like, you're going to have a moment where I think some people are going to go, what are my ethics? What am I comfortable doing? And you will see some bad actors who have no morals and will create tools to get around everything. And then other people who are going to really struggle to figure out what to do next. And I think we're hitting a really interesting time. And the big one is, we were talking earlier, and I wanted to come back to this quick. You said, like, I don't know
Yeah.
what's real and what's not with these Ticketmaster court cases. One thing that I think is crystal clear that is real is that they were allowing people to hold thousands of accounts. And, there was that whole buying and selling of accounts. Buying and selling accounts is probably going to fall off and be
Yeah.
less of a thing pretty quickly. And Ticketmaster clearly, people always say that I'm out here to defend them. They clearly were letting people have more than one account. Their perception is that that's okay. But I don't think that anyone other than the brokers and Ticketmaster think it's okay for one entity to have over 1,000 Ticketmaster accounts. And that's clearly gone away. And, they've made that change. And I would assume, I don't know if anybody's analyzed this yet, but I would assume that people pulling tickets, that these numbers are going to start falling, to the amount of inventory, and liquidity is going to drop. And to what they say, prices are going to go up, but prices are going to go up because there's less product, and the market itself is going to contract.
Mhm.
So even though a ticket price goes up, the gross value of the market should drop.
Yeah, and I would say on this too is, like, you have to look at, again, follow the incentives. The incentives were always there for, like, can we clean the house, right? Forget the brand damage that, like, having 50% of your house on the resale or the secondary market is doing to you, to the quote unquote heat of the show, or to the to the artist's ability to build a sustainable business for themselves. The incentive was like, let's let people buy out these tickets as fast as possible, and then hopefully they'll resell them, so that we can get a second hit at the fee. Is that accurate in the belief? I don't know, but that's what it looks like from the outside.
Yeah, one thing I want to add to that just hit me is, you've got these guys on Twitter like Ticket Truth and Ticket Help, who I don't know what company funds them, but they're constantly out attacking platinum ticketing. And it's kind of funny because I don't like platinum ticketing overall either, but my solution is just different. I think we should take that allotment of however many platinum tickets we've had and take those platinum tickets and just drop them right into the secondary. And they can show up on Ticketmaster as well as verified resale and on every other marketplace. And if we made that minor change, again, the gross of the show stays the same, but the fans will be mad at the scalpers instead of the artist, and the artist sidesteps some of that hate for platinum, which is a shitty product, which is really created to take on the scalpers. So I just think we're doing a bad job at how we approach taking on those scalpers, because that same ticket with a different name and distributed on other platforms, all those people would say are fine until they realized who was selling it and that it was cutting into the profits of whoever their corporate overlord is that pays their salary to tweet all day.
Yeah. I would say that what's often missed in this conversation is there's 3 P's of pricing that I teach people about. And that's the first, the process that you use to set the price, which I think you talked about too, is like people just don't know what's going on. I think that like just looking at backwards data and like ongoing sales data is just one part of that process. That's a different conversation. Maybe we'll come back and we'll talk about that at some other point. It's the price you set. But the big thing that people are missing out on is like the promotion of the price and the product. And so the thing is like the platinum tickets, just like Verified Fan and some of these other programs, has now developed a connotation and a impression in people's heads that's 180 degrees away from what the initial idea was or was promoted as. And I think that, like you said, it's just like reframing it, repackaging it, rethinking how you're selling it can go a long way. And I just know that that's true because I've like set prices for like at this point millions of items. I'm like the Yoda of pricing. But Randy, we could go on for this for a while, and I'd like to save something for the next time we talk, because now that you've come on, you'll have an open invitation to come on whenever you have something you want to talk about or promote, as like a lot of the many time multiple guests have. But where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, you can find me. I'm predominantly on LinkedIn at just linkedin.com/ it's either Randy Nichols or Randy J Nichols. Just try both. I never know what my own name is. And I'm also, the folks who, know me on Twitter can find me. I believe I'm at ForceMM on Twitter. And I'm not always active there. I kind of hate Twitter. I just kind of jump in there just to
throw some bombs and leave.
Yeah, I just like to throw jabs at the professional misinformation people who are paid by some lobbying firm to protect the brokers. Just jump in there every day for 10 minutes just to remind people that they're full of shit since they have large followings and we don't have the funds on our side to hire someone to do that full time. So just those are the 2 best spots to find me is, if you just want to see pictures of me unrelated to everything else, follow me on Instagram at Randy Nichols.
I love following people on Instagram. It's like you were saying about me, it humanizes you.
Exactly. Yeah. And maybe some of these people who don't like me will get after listening to this, oh, Randy is a human. And I'm down to talk to people. That's the last thing I'll say is message me on LinkedIn if you find me. Like, hit me up. I want to understand your side. If you want to learn more about my side, hit me up. The only way we grow is to talk to each other. And, on the lobbying side, just throw this out and then we should shut down. But spend a lot of time talking to people from both parties when I'm talking about legislation. And there's people who I despise on certain issues, but on this issue, I like what they like. And I've built relationships with people who I may not have before. And there's a greater understanding in everything if we all just talk to each other and try to understand rather than tear each other down.
I think that is a good lesson to leave on, is that even if I disagree with your point, it doesn't mean I disagree that I don't like you as a person, and that I can and this thing I might not agree with you on, but you might be able to shift my opinion or my point of view a little bit because I might have never considered your idea. So I think that your example of talking to people is really great, and I would encourage people to hit you up because totally a nice guy, totally great guy to talk to. So Randy, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Let me know what you thought about my conversation with Randy. Send me an email. It is my name, Dave at davewakeman.com. Make sure you check out the Dave Wakeman website at davewakeman.com. You can find my store there. I have put up a set of customer choices in the shop, and there's going to be more stuff there, but what I wanted to do was set up a rudimentary path for people so that you had an idea of how to work with me. One of the things that I had to think about was how I wanted to help people going forward, and what that would look like. So that is the culmination of that. So check it out, davewakeman.com. You'll see the shop at the top. Check out the Talking Ticket Slack channel. New and improved value coming quickly. Was working on that over the weekend. I'm recording this on Monday, November 3rd. I've got some new ideas. We're going to do some things to make it more valuable and help you create value by using it. So I'm going to start rolling that stuff out in the next couple days. Probably even today, the 3rd, I'm going to post some stuff there for the 400 people that are already in the group to give them a preview. Right. So that's where I'm going to preview new ideas, new intellectual property, new in-person and online events, potentially videos. I don't know. I'm playing with all kinds of stuff. So we'll see. But that's the Talking Ticket Slack channel. We're an hour and almost 7 minutes into this podcast. So if you've made it this far, I know you love the podcast and you love me. So thank you. I love you back. But do me a favor. Share this conversation with somebody who might need to hear it. Rate it and review it on your favorite podcast platform. If you have guest suggestions or topics you'd like to hear about, send those my way, Dave at davewakeman.com. Every little bit helps, and it helps me continue to grow the podcast. It helps me to continue to get great guests. I have had some really, really great ones lately. And tomorrow, November 4th, I'm going to record one with my buddy Richard Howell, who has a whole new initiative that he's working on. But I want to keep this up. That's my way, talk to you, help you learn and apply some of these ideas. So rate the podcast, review it, subscribe, share it. All those things matter. They help me grow the podcast, help me get great guests, do all these things. And as always, I can't thank you enough for being here and listening. Last month, October of 2025, was the highest listenership since before COVID started. So thank you for that. It just encourages me to continue to give you these conversations, but I couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Take it easy.